Hello, everybody. Welcome to DisneyRun01, Episode 2, my video blog in which I discuss all things Run Disney, running, Disney, a little bit of everything. Basically, my journey to this year's 2019 Run Disney Wine&Dine Half Marathon Challenge, where I'm doing the 10K and the half marathon back to back. And today I'm gonna discuss a little bit more about motivation and preparation, and what you need to do to kind of take those steps. And to me, the most important step a person can take isn't the first one, it's the next one. And what I mean by that is it's really easy to kind of get yourself going and say, okay, the first step is always identifying a problem, right? It's always going to be, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to start running. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then, that first step is, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy the shoes. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the clothes. I'm going to get a smartwatch. I'm going to get a Fitbit or, some sort of fitness tracker. I'm going to get the apps. I'm going to do all of this stuff and I'm going to get ready. And that's the first step. The second step, the next step, is actually going out and doing it, and to keep doing it and keep doing it after that. And that's why, it's actually a quote from a book Brandon Sanderson wrote, and it's the most important step a person can take isn't the first step, it's the next step. And because there's always a next step, there's always something after, and you always have to keep motivated to reach for that something after. And I completely identify with it, and you can apply that to a lot of different things. But, we're talking about running, so the next step, right, is always important in running. So here is the next step. The next step for me is always getting motivated to go out and run, or go out to the gym. I actually just went to the gym for the first time in a long time today. And at first, it was a little bit of anxiety inducing, where, my palms started getting a little bit sweaty when I was driving and, driving up to the gym. And I'm like, oh man, what if my key fob doesn't work? What if, I haven't been in so long, they canceled the membership for some reason, or, something like that. But I stepped through the door, no issue, and said, okay, that step's done. The next step is getting on the elliptical or the treadmill or whatever it is and actually doing it and going and, getting there. There's actually a sign in the gym that says, hey, you're here, congratulations. Sometimes that's the hardest step. And it really is sometimes. A lot of people, it's our good friend Tommy used to be very fond of a phrase, avoid excuses. And maybe he was using it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but in reality, there's always going to be 1,000 reasons not to do something. There's always going to be, I woke up and my head hurts a little bit. Oh, I woke up and, I didn't really get a lot of sleep last night. I'm going to sit this one out. And then that one day of skipping training, whatever it is that you were going to do, turns into a week, turns into a month, turns into however much longer it is until you finally get that motivation to actually go and take that next step. And that to me is the most important thing. Now I will back up a little bit here and say, okay, so if you are just getting started, here are some tips to get to that level, to get to that next step. And the first thing is you need to go out and invest in a good pair of running shoes. And you need to make sure that they're actually for running and probably also for long distance running. And there is a difference. You're not going to show up in a pair of, Air Jordans. You're not going up in, cross trainers, basketball shoes, anything like that. It's, you need a very specific kind of shoe to accomplish the task that you're looking for. If you happen to be in the Orlando area, I would highly recommend a store called Track Shack. Track Shack has a lot of wonderful people there. They are very knowledgeable and very helpful, and they will actually measure your shoe. And if you bring in an old pair of running shoes, they'll actually take a look at it, take a look at the tread wear, take a look at how you're actually running and striking your foot and that kind of thing, to make sure that it's the best shoe for you. And all of my experiences there have always been positive. I've never felt like they're trying to upsell or they're trying to, put me in a shoe that isn't going to work for me. It's always, your best interest, because that's how they make their business. They make it on being that reliable person. There's another one that's Fit to Run. I think it's also actually Florida-based, but it's also another very good store where they will actually, they get you on a treadmill and they'll hook up a camera to the back to see how you're running on the treadmill as well. And based on that, they can recommend a certain amount of, a certain running shoe, that kind of thing. I've actually had a lot of success with Under Armour shoes, believe it or not. They're very comfortable, and for what I need for the way I run, apparently, the way that, my foot hits the ground, they're very good, very comfortable. I've actually really not had a lot of knee issues that I've had in the past after switching to Under Armour shoes. So definitely check those out. If you're in the Orlando area, or maybe even if you're here for maybe some other sort of Run Disney event, definitely check out Track Shack. They're very knowledgeable, super helpful. You also probably want to invest in some sort of fitness tracker. A lot of smartphones nowadays, they can do everything right. So you can get a running app, or, just some, probably even just use like Google Maps or something. But I actually use a smartwatch. I use a Garmin Forerunner 35. And what I like about that is actually that I don't need my phone with me. I don't run with my phone. I have an iPod Shuffle that I run with, and my running watch. So that's all that I need when I take it with me, because it has its own built-in GPS. So it tracks my steps, it tracks my distance, it tracks, my pacing and all of that good stuff. So I would definitely recommend getting something that can do that for you, because especially when you're running long distances like this, the best piece of advice that a lot of people will tell you is that you have to pace yourself. Literally, you have to come up with some sort of pacing. Now, Run Disney will tell you that for the 10K and beyond races, you need to pace somewhere around a 15 or a 16-minute mile. And to some people, that doesn't sound like too much. But if you're not used to running that much, especially over a long distance, it can get, you can get swept, believe it or not. I know a few people that have unfortunately gotten there because they weren't training properly. So you definitely want to make sure that when you're training, you're not just going out and running until you're tired and then you call it a day. You want to make sure that you're kind of actually keeping up with those pacing requirements, and not only keeping track of it on, while you're actually running and right after, but I would definitely recommend actually doing some sort of run diary also, even if it's just on, a scratch pad or something like that, or if you get an actual notebook or something like that, make sure you're writing down, actually I have mine right here, I hope, yeah. And, I have date, time, temperature, how much, how long I ran, my distance, my time. So I'm going to break it down by pace, by mile, maybe even like first mile I did this, second mile I did this. What did I eat maybe right before? Did I eat right before? How did I feel afterwards? What other stuff was going on that may have either added or taken away from that run? And that's a really, it keeps you motivated to want to kind of get out and do that kind of stuff, especially if you keep it somewhere where you can look at it and go, oh man, the last time that I actually tracked my running was a week ago. I need to go out and do something. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The last time I ran actually was March 25th before today. So that's about a month and a half already. So I know I'm way behind, and that's kind of why I started this anyway, to start motivating myself to do that. But it's always about taking that next step. It's always about getting started. And, there's a lot of different training tips and races and methods and all that stuff. Run Disney is a big fan of Jeff Galloway and the Galloway method, which is all about intervals and pacing. So if that is something that interests you, definitely check out the Run Disney website. It has a lot of great information there. But basically, the two biggest things that I could say is definitely do intervals. And that's a combination of running and walking. Depending on your fitness level, that could be more running and less walking. It could be a little bit of both. It could be more walking and less running. But it's down to time, and it's not down to a distance. I used to do a distance. I used to say, okay, I'm going to run for a mile, I'm going to walk for a little bit, maybe walk for a minute or two, and then run the rest of the mile, and then walk for a minute or two, and then run the rest of the mile, and it wasn't really working as much, and I wasn't getting my potential to where I could have been, compared to when I switch over to intervals and I said, wow, I'm getting a little bit better actually, and I feel better at the end of the race. I don't feel completely exhausted and wiped. So it definitely helps to pace yourself. So I definitely recommend doing intervals. And there's also this theory about a negative split. Negative split basically means that you actually slow down a little bit for that first part of the race, so that you can kind of save something in the tank, save a little bit of gas for the second half. And the idea behind it is that the second half of the race, whether it's by distance or time or whatever it is, that second half is actually a better end time than the first half. So say you're running, 10-minute mile, 10-minute mile, 10-minute mile, and that means that the next 3 miles are, you try and do a little bit more, so you can do like a 9-minute mile, 9-minute mile, 9-minute mile. And the theory behind that is, by the time the end of the second half of that race comes around, you're going to be completely wiped. And a lot of times that is absolutely true, where I try and say I'm going to pace myself, but then, there's that, adrenaline that rushes, especially at the beginning of a race, where you just want to run as fast as you can. And you have to kind of be conscious of that, because when you get into that long distance races, when you get 2, 3, 4 miles in and you're huffing and puffing, you're going to see a very sharp decrease in your times. So the whole idea behind attempting a negative split is to make sure that you're saving something in the tank there for later on, and you're not just running as far as you can and then stopping. You have to kind of pace yourself. That's good for a short burst, but over the long run, literally, it's much better to try and pace yourself and maybe even go for that negative split. It's a little bit harder to achieve that kind of thing, so that's why I would say just go with intervals first. And if you happen to notice that you're doing negative splits, that's even better. But your goal, at least at first, should be just to get that motivation to get out there and to start doing something. You don't have to go and say, all right, I'm gonna, you don't get those goals overnight. You're not going to be able to run that 5K if you've never ran before. You're not going to get to that 10K if you've never tried to train for it before. If you don't do little goals and just get out there. If it's going to be a day that you're not actually going to be going on a long run, go for a long walk instead. Go do something. Go be, one of the best things about, being a dog owner now is that I get to walk my dog all the time. And, it's not always the longest walk, but it's something. It's little bits and pieces that are going to overall contribute to your overall health and your overall success. And it all goes back to every little bit helping, every step helping. And, I think it was also Confucius, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? So the most important step you can take isn't the first step. It's the next step. And so here is to the next step for everybody, and the next episode. So we'll see you next Sunday. And until then, as always, have a magical week, and we'll see you real soon.